Welcome to Ellis B. Feaster's Radio Air Check and Classic TV channel.
People are a lot of pigs. They're greedy and they're dumb. I'm sure that's just a simple truth. Look how far he's come.
From the heart of old Death Valley to the ruling of our land.
A simple trick, you simple pigs, just the way we planned.
That's Agency Man and Frank Zappa and the Mothers of Invention. This is Tom Donahue, and Frank Zappa of the Mothers of Invention is our guest in the studio tonight. And we heard Agency Man, which is what they call, I guess, an outtake in a sense.
Yeah, it's an outtake.
Something you decided not to work with. Reuben and the Jets is the most recent release of the Mothers, and we're going to get to that later on. I want to play some of it and talk to you about it. But about 6 months ago, there was a period of time on top 40 stations. All of a sudden, there were 3 or 4 records that sounded like records from the 50s. And it had that 57, 58 sound.
Well, I never listened to the radio, so that could have been true.
Yeah. Well, they all had that same simple sort of Moonglows beat to them.
Well, you know, if you analyze the sound of what the Moonglows did, it wasn't really simple. Rhythmically, it was pretty simple, but harmonically, it was amazing for the things they got away with and within the chord structure that they were working on. And they were very tight, a very good vocal group. Really exceptional.
It was a period of time when there was a tremendous variation in the musical ability of groups who were scoring with records. Sometimes really frightening variety.
Yeah, well, you know, that's one of the things that I like best about that kind of music, is that even the ones that weren't competent musically had so much to offer in the emotional department, that it didn't make any difference.
On the basics all the time.
That's right. It's glandular. I can identify with that.
That used to be, of course, the big argument that was offered by adults during that period of time who didn't dig the music was that it was too simple.
Yeah. Well, I've been handed a book here called Who's Who in Rock and Roll. It must have been published about 12 years ago. Some sort of greasing that Alan Freed put out, and it has a thing in the back where he's taking all the credit for putting rock and roll together and making it all happen. Let's see, where is this thing? It's got a quotation from, oh yes, "Rock and roll keeps rollin'" is what the headline says. And then it starts off this way: "Rock and roll is lewd, in plain fact dirty," blasts Frank Sinatra. "You're so wrong, Frankie," echo thousands of rock and roll fans. "I consider it the greatest music ever," says the king of rock and roll, Elvis Presley.
And et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah, and they're still doing that in various levels today.
Yeah, still doing that same kind of rap. There were a lot of closet fans in those days, just like you have closet queens, who listened to rock all the time. Very seldom would admit it to their friends.
Yeah.
But I used to run into it. I had a friend who was teaching English at the University of Pennsylvania about 56, 57 when I started playing in Philadelphia.
Yeah.
And he had always told me he'd never listened to any of it, but all of a sudden started rapping to me about what he thought I should be playing more of, and became a fan in a hurry. As I suspect he had been all along.
Rock and roll music is good for you. It's very healthy for you. I think it's one of the greatest problems facing the entire world today is mental health and poor education. I can't say that rock and roll will improve your education. Well, it might, because there are a lot of things to be learned about the way you're supposed to act in a given social situation.
Rock tells you how to treat girls.
That's right.
And it tells you what to do or how to feel when your heart's been broken.
That's right.
A lot of things.
The unwritten social code of the younger generation is implied in the relationships of the boy to the girl and most of the love lyric situations, in these records. They don't even have to come out and spell it out, but the whole social system is implied in those records, and that's the way I learned how to do what I do, getting all those instructions. You couldn't find out any other way. Your mother and father didn't know. They hated you because, you're creepy. You're a teenager. And when I was in my teens, calling somebody a teenager was really the nastiest thing you could say to him. You teenager, juvenile delinquent, and all that stuff.
There was it's impossible to take anything back and say this is the beginning. I mean, Alan Freed can't say what the beginning of rock and roll was. To me, it was always a record by Don Howard called "Oh Happy Day."
I remember that, yeah. But I don't think that wasn't the beginning for me. I think the first thing that I heard was, it was either G or Shaboom. I forget which one came out first, but it was back in that era.
No, but I think "Oh Happy Day" was before that.
Yeah.
I think it really did come before it. It was. I think what happened was around a couple of times. But it was just the one cat singing in a voice. That was a low voice. Time when people had good voices or bad voices. Yeah. And this is a bad voice. Wow. It was the first record by somebody who sang.
With a bad voice that made money.
Yeah. And he had that
and that's the beginning of rock and roll. There you have it.
Right. Well, maybe it's...
See, he opened up the way for us.
They say that part of the appeal has been that people can say, I could do that.
Yeah, that's right. That's the reason why people like Johnny Carson and those talk show people on television make it big, because, there's a nice, simple guy, he can't hurt you, I can do that, and I can identify with him.
And he looks right, because he has brown hair, and he's got the right size.
Brown hair, white skin, blue suit.
When Les Crane first started on TV, I said, man, you'll never make it. You are the wrong color. You may be white, but you've got dark hair, you're Jewish, you're all the things you shouldn't be to do that kind of show.
And then what happened?
He still didn't make it.
Do you think it's possible we could listen to this record?
What do you want to play?
There's a record sitting over there called The Handsome Cabin Boy from an album called Blow Boys Blow. Ewan McCall and A.L. Lloyd sing Songs of the Sea, and it's one of my favorite songs. And it probably doesn't belong on a radio station, but seeing as how this is sort of underground and everything, you might sort of get into the mood of it. It's actually a sea chanty, which is it's a whale song they would sing on whaling ships when they didn't have anything else to do. And it's an interesting tune. Melodically, I think it's very appealing, and it has an interesting storyline. And it says on the back of the album, "It is a common sailor's dream that among the crew is a girl dressed as a boy. Oddly enough, in songs based on this fantasy, it is nearly always an officer who discovers the girl's identity. In this case, the plight of the pregnant cabin boy might be considered tragic, seen from the girl's viewpoint. But, as the sailors see it, the situation is inexhaustibly comic. The version of this much-loved ballad that is sung here is unusual for the equivocal role played by the captain's wife. And if you listen very closely to the lyrics, they're very trippy.
Here's hoping the wars don't rise again, our sailors to destroy, and here's hoping for a jolly lot more like the handsome cabin boy.
That's Rashomon.
Rashomon, what's that?
Well, it's a Japanese play that's been made into about 15 movies.
Yeah?
Where a woman is supposedly raped by a man that accosts she and the man she's with. Yeah. And each of them runs down the story. Yeah. But they each tell it in a totally different way.
Oh, I've heard about that.
Yeah, you've been there.
But I didn't see the I haven't been there. I didn't see the similarity between that and the bizarre relationship between this cabin boy and whoever it was that was strapping him or her or whatever it was on this ship. But I'd like to dedicate that song to the GTOs and the BTOs in Laurel Canyon, because I'm sure they'll understand it. And next we have a record called Grunion Run, which was recorded about 6 years ago. in a studio that I used to own in Cucamonga, California. And it was produced by Paul Buff, who is also happened to be the engineer on another fantastically successful teenage record a few years back that we all know and love, Wipeout. He's the man responsible for committing that thing to tape, and he's still trying to live that disaster down. And he, under our forcing him, agreed to record this piece of music called Grunion Run, which at the time seemed to be not very commercial at all. He really didn't want to do it, but it wound up being the B-side on a record called Tijuana Surf, which turned out to be a very good-selling record. It sold 8,000 copies in Fresno and 150,000 copies in Mexico, where it was #1 for 17 weeks.
Wipeout was on the charts longer than any other record I can think of in the last 5 or 6 years.
That tells you something about the people who recorded it and who bought it, and also the people who played it on the radio, because they really helped out.
Only the best.
A Grunion Run was a little ahead of its time because of the technique of the fuzz tone stuff used in there. The fuzz tone used on the guitar in this record was a homemade number before they were commercially available. Paul Buff, the electronic wizard, who is now the recording engineer at Original Sound Records for Art LeBeau in Los Angeles, had manufactured this little homemade cheapy fuzz tone by accident. He tried to make a transistor amplifier, didn't know what he was doing, and found out that everything you plugged into it distorted like crazy, so he started running everything through the bass, the guitar, and here it is, the B-side of Tijuana Surf.
The Grunion thing is peculiar to Southern California, isn't it?
The Grunion? Oh yeah, some people don't know what a Grunion is. It's a fish that comes up out of the water and sort of runs up onto the beach on its tail and squats in the sand and lays eggs. And during this procedure, Southern California teenagers gather together with their cars, line their cars up on the beach, aim their headlights out on the sand, turn them on, and then run out there on the beach and grab the fish while they're laying their eggs. Tells you a lot about Southern California teenagers, doesn't it?
Well, what's the line? I saw a book recently that said that you got to understand that they start out having their brains baked out in the sun.
No, I don't think it really works that way. That's sort of the kind of a thing that a person from San Francisco would say about a person from Los Angeles.
They're uptight. Somebody from Los Angeles. Who was that, Rachel?
A guy who, Max Schulman.
Yeah, Max Schulman.
So their brains are baked out in the sun? Well, I think that the school systems in California have a tendency to sort of,
make a major contribution.
Yeah, I don't think you really need to rely on the sunshine to do away with the intelligence of the young people. The school system is designed to take care of that. Blot your creativity. Oh, no, I was born in Baltimore. I wish I was from El Monte.
Somebody called me a little while ago and asked if you were from El Monte, what part of El Monte you were.
No, most of my time spent in that area was spent in Pomona, Ontario, and Cucamonga, California, which is a few miles east of El Monte. El Monte is a sociological phenomenon that really should be studied very carefully. It's amazing things took place there during the 50s. Whole sections of historical folklore happened there and then just disappeared and were forgotten.
Oh, for a few minutes.
I don't think they necessarily disappeared there.
Well, there are a few.
Somebody somewhere is putting it all down, recording it all.
I don't know whether they're really putting it down. I think that some people remember it, but it should be treated in a scholarly work. And the details of this should be turned over to an institution that saves that stuff for future generations. You know, when future generations want to really know the whys and wherefores of the Jelly Roll hairdo, the black leather jacket, the parking lot knifing, tire slashings, and the true function of a tire chain as applied to teenage recreation. These things should be recorded by one of those scholars, you know, that's supposed to have chops to do that stuff, instead of relying on the memory of poor rock and rollers who were forced to work at the El Monte Legion Stadium in one of the worst acoustical environments in Southern California.
Or worse yet, perhaps the history will be written on the basis of what the newspapers were saying about those teenagers.
Yeah.
Or what the movies did to them. Like, my favorite movie is a teenage movie made in the mid-50s, because they didn't have anything right then. Yeah. And seen 10 years later, it's really...
Yeah, which movie? You remember some of those? How about Girls Town? Did you ever see that one?
Yeah, I've seen Girls Town. I've seen a lot of the old ones that have Frank Gorson in them.
Yeah.
Who's that singer records from Warner Brothers? Did Connie Stevens for Nose Job?
There's one that has Paul Anka in it.
Yeah, I've seen one with Paul Anka in it. And then there were a number of them. Well, the car movies I thought were the best.
Yeah, they're really good. Cars. If they only knew about things like that in Europe, you know, it's very hard to go to Europe and play a concert and sing a song about a 39 Chevy and see these people wailing around on bicycles and they just don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah.
And even if they knew what the car was, they can't project into the mystique of the fuzzy dice and the taco balls around the windshield. You know, you just can't tell that to them.
They don't know about going to Mexico and getting a real postal job and standing over them until you wanted to make sure that...
yeah, you get your $50
right
worth.
Kind of stuff in not old newspapers and find it tucked, rolled, completed.
We have another hit tune.
Took us right to stack out.
Yeah. This is a piece of music written by Pierre Boulez, and it's one of my favorite pieces of music. It's one little piece of a larger piece of music that he wrote, and the title of which I can't pronounce in French, but in English it means a hammer without a master. And it's, I think it's got bongos in it. Here's the instrumentation. It's Marjorie McKay, alto, singer. Arthur Gleghorn, flute. Milton Thomas, viola. William Kraft, vibraphone. Dorothy Remsen, xylorimba. Theodore Norman, guitar. And Walt Goodwin, percussion, bongos, maracas, tambourines, claves, bells, tam-tam, triangle, gong, cymbals, and small cymbals. I'd like to say something about the conditions under which this recording was made. It's been around for quite some time. It was originally released as a mono recording and now is available in stereo for some strange reason. And it was done during a time when it was not the popular thing to do to record avant-garde music or new music at all. And they figured, well, we'll do it because Boulez is making a reputation. He's one of those hot new European composers. And it sold surprisingly well when they put it out. The only problem is that rumors through the studio musician grapevine in Los Angeles came back to me and a number of other people that the music was so difficult that the performers on the piece just sort of started making up their own things in spots, you know, and nobody except Boulez could tell that it was not what was supposed to happen. And I got the score to the piece and tried to follow along with this version of it, and it doesn't match up. You know, you can see that there are errors in it. But I have since listened to recordings conducted by Boulez, and I like this one better because it has a better beat. If you go for bongos, kids, this is for you.
We'll be rapping with Frank in a minute.
Intermediate use of today may be, in some incredible way, a true conservative.
That's author-publisher William Jovanovich.
The founding fathers, unfortunately, assumed that the outstanding leaders of the country would want to go into public service.
That's pollster and writer George Gallup. These men and 20 other leading American thinkers have written a very necessary book called America Now. It's about you and me and our assumptions. Our assumptions about what kind of a people we are, what kind of a country America is. Take a fresh look at America.
Send your check or money order for $6.50. That's a $1 saving off the publication price to America Now, Post Office Box 2300, Westbury, New York, for your copy.
1, 2, buckle my shoe.
Those creative mothers, the mothers of invention. Invade Berkeley, Saturday, November 30th.
This is a commercial for the Mothers of Invention Hop, somewhere in Berkeley. They made me come down to the studio and do a commercial for our appearance. I think that's really a drag to do. In Berkeley, of all ridiculous places for them to play.
Mary Ann Fowler presents The Mothers of Invention, Saturday, November 30th, 8:30 p.m., Berkeley Community Theater. Admission, $2.50, $3.50, and $4.50. Tickets on sale at Downtown Center Box Office, 325 Mason Street in San Francisco, Sherman Clay Box Office, 2135 Broadway in Oakland, and Record City, 2340 Telegraph in Berkeley. Please enclose self-addressed stamped envelope with mail orders. For information, call 836-0564.
This is Tom Donahue. We're talking to Frank Zappa of the Mothers of Invention. And we just have a little early electronic music.
Oh, that's not electronic music.
Well, it's... okay, early avant-garde music.
Yeah, that's...
electronic as well.
Oh, okay, Tom. Now here's a little early teen Grease. It's a sort of middle period teen Grease, actually. It's called When We Get Married by the Dream Lovers. And we discussed earlier the fact that the unwritten social code of the younger generation is embodied in their music. Just listen to the life described by the lyrics of this song.